Christa Pike was just 18 years old when she was sentenced to death for the murder of another teenager, Colleen Slemmer. Today, she's the only woman counting down her days on Tennessee's death row. Christa was raised by her grandmother in Knoxville after her mother fell neck deep into drugs and booze. Mama introduced her to drugs and Christa dropped out of school. Christa planned on becoming a nurse, but those plans came off the rails when she met and fell in love with Daryl Shipp, a 17-year-old culinary student with a knack for devil worship. He dabbled in Satanism and gangs since he was a kid and considered himself an avid devil worshiper by the time he met Christa. But to his surprise, she loved Lucifer too. They'd chant, hold seances, and pray to whatever totems Daryl had in his room. Christa called herself his Lil Devil. Satan and sex made them inseparable. Then, 19-year-old Colleen Slemmer entered the picture. Colleen was from Jacksonville, Florida, and although she didn't have a tough upbringing like Daryl and Christa, she still enrolled at the Knoxville Job Corps around the same time. But when she met Colleen, Christa was convinced she had a thing for Daryl and was trying to steal him. Of course, Colleen vehemently denied it, and so did everyone else who knew her. But it didn't matter how many people told Christa she was wrong. The jealous Satan worshiper had murder on her mind. But Christa put on a friendly face whenever Colleen was around. You know that face, that mean girl face that says, "I hate your guts even though I'm complimenting your shoes." Under that fake smile, Christa wanted to kill her. On Thursday, January 12th, 1995, she put her plan into action, simply because she felt mean that day. Daryl and another friend and co-devil worshiper, Shadala Peterson, were enlisted to help. Together, they came up with a fiendish plan. Around 10:15 p.m., another friend, Kim, watched Colleen walk off campus with Christa, Daryl, and Shadala. Students had to sign in and out whenever they left the dorms, and all four signed their names before heading toward a nearby park. Christa had a box cutter and a miniature meat cleaver hidden in her pocket. Christa and Colleen walked into a Blockbuster music store to rent CDs before heading toward an abandoned steam mill on an isolated corner of the University of Tennessee campus. It was close enough to walk to, but deep enough into the woods so no one would hear Colleen scream. Christa told her she hid a bag of in the trees and wanted to with Colleen as a peace offering. But things took a heinous turn once they were out of sight. Colleen and Christa began fighting, just yelling back and forth at first, accusations and denials about Colleen and Daryl. But fists started to fly moments later. Colleen pleaded, "Why are you doing this to me?" and threatened to get Christa kicked out of the Job Corps. Her threats weren't enough to save her life. The attack let up and Colleen slowly climbed to her feet. She tried to run away, but Daryl ran after and tackled her like a linebacker. He pinned her down until she stopped and dragged her back to Christa. The attack continued while Shadala kept lookout. She began hearing voices telling her to finish the job or she'd be thrown in jail for the rest of her life for attempted murder. But the sight of Colleen's froze her hand for a moment. She stared down and watched her, giving Colleen just enough time to roll over, push herself up, and try running away. She hardly made it 3 steps. Knowing threats wouldn't get her anywhere, Colleen began bargaining for her life. She said if the trio just let her go, she'd head straight back to Florida and never tell anyone. She promised she wouldn't even go back to the dorms to get her things. But her pleas were ignored. The only thing Christa had to say was, "Shut up. It's harder to hurt somebody when they're talking to you." The more Colleen talked, the more Christa. And then she tried shutting her up for good. She used the box cutter to only low-pitched grunts and mumbles. By now, almost an hour passed, but through it all, Colleen never stopped fighting for her life. She kept getting back up and trying to run away, and every time, Daryl. On her final escape attempt, Christa picked up a loose piece of asphalt and threw it at the back of Colleen's head. The blow was enough to her. She and Daryl grabbed one of Colleen's feet and dragged her behind some bushes, leaving her and dying. Before they left, Christa and Daryl carved a 5-pointed star, a pentagram, into Colleen's but Christa wasn't leaving without a souvenir. She knelt next to Colleen's lifeless body, removed a piece of her and walked away. The trio signed back into the Job Corps dorms. Colleen's return signature was notably missing. Christa couldn't stop bragging about what she'd done that night. Minutes after her assault on Colleen, she returned to Kim's room and bragged about the murder. She even showed off the piece of Colleen's still covered in blood. She detailed the entire crime as she pranced around the room in circles. Kim just sat there, unsure whether to believe her or not. At breakfast in the morning of Friday the 13th, Kim asked what she did with the piece of Colleen's skull. Christa assured her it was safe in her pocket, saying, "Yes, I'm eating breakfast with it." Later that morning, she made eerily similar comments to another classmate named Stephanie. She pointed down to the dark stains on her shoes and said, "That ain't mud on my shoes. That's..." She even showed Stephanie the piece of Colleen's skull. While Christa was busy flaunting her crime, a University of Tennessee groundskeeper was working near the old steam mill when he noticed blood on the ground. He followed the trail to Colleen's corpse, which was so... He assumed it was but don't wear jeans and pink sweaters. He called police, and 36 hours later, they had Christa, Taddaral, and Shadala in custody. All they needed were the sign-out logs from the night Colleen went missing and Kim's eyewitness testimony. The trio spilled their guts from there. As the story goes, Christa and Taddaral were both wearing pentagram necklaces when they were arrested. Christa waived her Miranda rights and confessed to Randy York, a now retired investigator with the Knoxville Police Department. He said she was joyful, giddy, and smiling through the whole thing. She couldn't wait to tell them what she did. Meanwhile, Taddaral went deeper into the devilish side of things. In the days prior, he mentioned to a fellow student named Kip that he had to make a human sacrifice because the celestial bodies were in alignment. He apparently had a Ouija board on him when he made this eerie statement. While police questioned their primary suspects, Dr. Sandra Elkins, the Knox County medical examiner, performed her autopsy on Colleen's body. Per standard procedure, Dr. Elkins began cataloging the wounds by assigning them letters of the alphabet. However, there were so many wounds on Colleen's body that Dr. Elkins said she'd have to stay in the morgue to catalog the whole thing. Doing so would take her through the entire alphabet. As for the cause of death, Dr. Elkins called it blunt force trauma to the head from the chunk of asphalt Christa used to... Colleen told Dr. Elkins that she was probably still alive when Christa delivered the final blow. The trial began in March 1996 with one paper comparing the courtroom scenes to those you'd see on TV. One of the more dramatized moments was when Murray Marks, an anthropologist with the University of Tennessee, took the stand with Colleen's, not a replica or a 3D model, the real thing. He also had the fragment Christa took as a souvenir and showed the jury how the piece fit perfectly, almost like a puzzle. Christa's trial wrapped up weeks later. Cameras rolled as the judge read her verdict, sentencing the then 20-year-old Christa to death for first-degree murder. She set the execution date for January 12, 1997, the 2-year anniversary of Colleen's death. Christa begged for one final moment with her mother before being let out of the courtroom. But the waterworks stopped shortly after when Christa penned an eye-opening letter to Taddaral. In it, she wrote, "Hey, love, I have 10 months left to live. Imagine that. I'd spend every moment with you if I could." She then asked Taddaral to change his statement to go along with hers. On Colleen, Christa wrote, "You see what I get for trying to be nice to that? I went ahead and so she'd die quickly instead of letting her, and they effing fry me." She signed the letter as Lil Devil and gave it to a guard, assuming they'd mail it to Taddaral. Instead, that letter ended up in the hands of the assistant district attorney. He read it aloud during her sentencing hearing, and the courtroom sat in stunned silence, and the judge gave Christa 25 years to life on top of her death penalty. Because the crime occurred when he was still a minor, Taddaral escaped the death penalty and was sentenced to life in prison. He'll be eligible for parole in 2028. As for Shadala, she turned state's witness and pleaded guilty to a significantly lesser charge. Accessory after the fact. She got away with 6 years probation, though some are convinced she was more involved than she let on. While Taddaral and Shadala faded into obscurity, Christa was still the killer leopard she'd always thought of herself as. And as usual, she didn't try to tame it. In 2002, against her attorney's advice, Christa asked the court to ignore her right to an appeal and speed up her execution. Perhaps Christa was just tired of sitting around and waiting to die. She mentioned how nobody was coming to take her to Disneyland. The court obliged and set an execution date for August 19th, 2002. She tearfully thanked the judge before turning to her mother, saying, "It's okay, Mommy." But Christa changed her mind in July, and the court suspended her execution on August 2nd. In 2004, Christa was convicted of attempted first-degree murder regarding the shoelace incident and received an additional 25 years. Although, for someone on death row, it doesn't make much difference. Christa spent the next decade fighting to have her sentence commuted to life in prison. When all seemed lost, she concocted an escape plan with one of the guards, Justin Heflin, and a pen pal named Donald Kohut. Donald and Christa's relationship blossomed beyond casual letters, and he began making the 1,800-mile round-trip drive from New Jersey to Nashville to visit. Citing security concerns, the Nashville prison never released the official escape plan, though Donald was supposedly the mastermind and Justin was bribed to help. An unsealed indictment revealed the plan had something to do with replicating a key, but that was about it. But loose lips sink ships, and rumors about the escape plan foiled it before getting off the ground. Justin agreed to cooperate and only lost his job, while Donald got 7 years in prison. Nobody could prove Christa's direct involvement and, thus, couldn't charge her with any crimes. As of 2022, Christa still sits as the only woman on death row in Tennessee. Even worse, the final piece of Colleen's, the one Christa took as a trophy, must remain in evidence until the case is officially closed, meaning until Christa herself is dead and gone. Colleen's mother, Mae Martinez, is begging Tennessee to either commute Christa's sentence or kill her. She only wants to put her daughter to rest once and for all, but needs the final puzzle piece back to do so.